So last time I took the engine out of the Impreza, started removing all the unnecessary components, stripping everything back to where I can get in there and clean and start some fab work for the new motor and transmission and all-wheel drive system. And today I'm going to remove the transmission and do more on the inside of the car. So I'm going to do it driveway style, even though I'm in the shop. I'm going to jack the car up and remove everything from the bottom. I do have a lift, 2-post. It's a rotary brand. This is not a paid promotion, but that's what I have because they're good, and some things are definitely worth buying that are American made. If you absolutely depend on the quality of something to make it safe, like an automotive lift, buy an American product. You know, it's people that live here doing stuff for people that live here. So I do have a lift. Let me show you guys the lift. There's the lift over there. The orange pumpkin is sitting there, although it's not on the lift. But since the orange pumpkin is in the way, and I don't really want to move it out of the way, I am going to do this on the ground. And most people that do this at home are going to do it on the ground anyway. So I'm going to jack it up, put it on jack stands higher in the front than the back, since I don't really need to do much in the back except disconnect the bolts for the rear drive shaft. I'm not taking the rear diff out today, but I am taking out the drive shaft, the transmission, and the front axles. On a side note, in the United States, we always call them transmissions. But in reality, a transmission is only an automatic, and what we call a manual transmission is really a gearbox. So in my videos, if it is an automatic, I call it transmission, and if it's a manual, I call it a gearbox. That's, you know, hat tip to my English brethren that separate the two. So in the United States, we refer to an engine in a car as an engine and an electric device as a motor. But motor is derived from the Latin movere, which is to move, or mover in Spanish. And all it means is something that moves. It's the past participle, so of to move in Latin. So that which moves. So if I call it a motor and not an engine, it's not that I don't know the difference. It's just that it's a false difference created by Americans because they want to separate, you know, an engine from a motor. And the term engine, by the way, comes from the idea or the word that means ingenious or creative. So it's a product that's creative in its design and its origin, but engine doesn't actually describe what it is. It just means it's a unique, creative, inventive idea. So one could call a computer an engine because it's also unique and creative. So really, we should just stick to the word motor because most of our language is Latin anyway. So trust your Latin. So I got all the bolts out of the transmission mount and the transmission cross member. To save myself some time, I cut the drive shaft immediately behind the transmission yoke. Reason I did that is, at least to use for measurement purposes, I am going to reuse the stock drive shaft. Once I get the new transmission in the car, and I say transmission because it is going to be an automatic. It's going to be a 6-speed auto with paddle shift. So once I get the transmission in the car, I will use its output shaft and the original Subaru drive shaft to build a measurement tool or a prototype of the final drive shaft. Of course, I will build a new drive shaft with a new center carrier bearing and proper attachment to the differential that I will use, but for the purpose of measurement and to make sure I get everything to where it fits and has the right amount of yoke slip or output shaft slip, I will use the stock pieces. On the front, I'm going to do something similar for the CV axles. So the new transmission and engine combo, of course, is a different brand, different manufacturer, so it will have different CV joints. So I will use the inner part of its CV joints and shaft and the outer part of the Subaru CV joint and shaft, and weld a sleeve to where I can get everything that's the right length and weld it all together, and then take it out of the car and build the new drive shafts, or the new half shafts CV joint shafts for the front of the car and the new drive shaft, and then I'll repeat the process when I change the rear end. Now, the general path of upgrades on a Subaru is, if you put in a motor that makes substantially more power than original, most people opt to use the Subaru Nissan R180 rear differential, which has a 180 millimeter ring gear, and that is a lot stronger than the 160 that comes in these cars stock, or even in the 5-speed newer cars. But I am going to opt to use a Ford 8.8 IRS, which is becoming popular in Supras. There's a couple of companies, including Grana's, who make a kit to put the Super 8.8 into JDM cars, or Japanese manufactured cars, and it's a lot stronger upgrade. The caveat is that it's hard to use that rear end with a Subaru front unless you have 411 gearing, because you can't get all the Subaru factory gear ratios like 354 or 390 in a Ford 8.8. Perhaps the 3.9, but the 3.54 is not offered for a Ford 8.8 rear end. So you either have to get the right 6-speed, or you would have to change out the gears in the 6-speed that you already have. But I've already checked gearing, and everything from 323, 373, 410, 411, 456 are all available for the front differential and the rear differential that I'm going to use, and that makes it a lot easier. So I'm going to opt for 373 gears. The reason is that the 6-speed that I'm going to use has an extremely low first gear, and if I went with something as high as a 410 or 456 or Subaru 444, first gear would just be too short. So 373 is going to be the gear ratio of the car. Final drive is going to be, or overdrive 6 gear is going to be 0.7 to 1. So top speed on the car should be about 260. Not that I'm ever going to go that fast, but it means that I'm still going to be in third or fourth gear at the top of a quarter mile, and on a road course I should be able to keep the car in third, fourth on the straightaways. So even though it's an automatic and shift time is 15 or 20 milliseconds, it means I won't have to be shifting as much, so less wear and tear on the drivetrain, less impact on the gears. So back to what I'm doing. So I cut the drive shaft. I also cut the CV joint, or the CV shafts right next to the front joints. So now all I have to do is drop this thing out, and it'll either go out through the back or through the front. At this point, when there's nothing in the way, you can do it either way you want. So I am probably going to just ease it over the cross member and pull it out the front. Except it's heavy, so I'm going to use the engine crane. Next time I'll start working on fitting the new engine, transmission, or at least the engine, and figuring out what to do about the new front cross member that I'll have to build. Thanks for watching.